You are listening to the TV Obsessive podcast, brought to you by TVObsessive.com.
Okay, welcome back to the TV Obsessive Podcast. Here today for episode 166. As always, I'm Cameron Crane, executive editor for TVObsessive.com, joined by Ryan Kirksey, writer and contributor for the site. How you doing today, Ryan?
Well, the past couple of days have been wonderful. As Cameron knows, last week I spent about 6 or 7 days out in the heat and rain in Central Texas at a camp with my kids. Boy, there's nothing that will make you appreciate being inside the television than spending a week like that. So I feel a little maybe behind the eight ball, as it were, catching up with things, but yeah, good overall.
Yeah, I mean, like at least you didn't have any wildfire smoke down there, right? I presume.
No, there was
That
some
was,
flooding issues near us, but didn't come to us. So, certainly, thinking about those that did have to deal with that, and it was nearby, but we never had to actually have anything horrific happen to us, thankfully.
yeah, that's good. That's wildfire smoke, man. I don't know. I mean, I was talking to someone around here and I was like, I guess it bothered me maybe more than it did other people, but it was pretty bad. Like there was actually one point where I was thinking about Silo, which we're going to continue talking about later in the day. And there was actually one point late last week where I was like, man, those people in the Silo, they're ungrateful. It sounds pretty. Presumably, I got good air filtration or whatever.
I hope so.
Um, but yeah, anyway, so we're going to continue this on today. We're up to episode 4. The air quality around here has improved. Thankfully, it's actually a beautiful day. Hopefully, this for everyone listening as well. We are, by the way, recording a little bit early, so we'll talk about what's in the news and so on and so forth. But like, if anything huge happens on Thursday this week, that would be why we're not talking about it because we're recording on Wednesday. Let's be honest about it. But we do have a couple of things. Right, I think I want to start. We usually chat about what we've been watching a little bit, and I promise I won't like keep talking about InfoWars over and over and over and over again. I know I have a few times already. But I wanted to follow up on it, I guess, in particular, because I found the most recent episode. It comes out on Thursdays. So that's another
Hmm.
reason maybe to mention the fact that it's Wednesday. Um, I really enjoyed it last week. Have you
Okay.
been watching it all on this? I know we've talked about the
I have not watched any of the first couple. I mean, for two of them, I just missed from being out of town. But I think this most recent one was one where, yeah, I wasn't around, so I haven't caught anything up to speed yet.
I think it was thinking about my reactions to it overall. So the one they put out back in May, I thought was hilarious, which
Yeah.
was just Tim Heidecker, and I think they call it emergency, that particular portion at least. And so I was excited when they were picking it back up again, and what, like very late June or as we entered July, whatever the date was exactly. And I recall saying on here, I was like, I don't know, it didn't do it for me as much. I've got a better feel for what they're doing now. I think part of it is if you tune into the live broadcast, you do get first a segment of Jim Haggerty, who I think is a
Hmm.
fictional character, and I apologize, I don't even have the name of the actor down. Unless maybe that's his real name. I don't know. But the guy has a history of doing like funny news segments for The Onion that goes way back with their like parody news channel. But now his bit is like that he's become this conspiracy theorist. And that really varies a bit for me. I can definitely see the humor,
Yeah.
but the first one was when they were launching InfoWars. The first one was just kind of like him and this other guy, and they kept on like, "They've been lying to you," and then like, their examples were things like John F. Kennedy was murdered, and stuff like that. And it was like, all right, but I was really tuning in for the Tim Heidecker stuff. This past week, I thought the Jim Haggerty one portion was also quite funny. But then the Tim Heidecker emergency InfoWars proper kind of the real InfoWars, the new InfoWars.
Yeah.
Now that Alex Jones popped like a balloon, um, that was just absolutely great. And part of this and why I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and take time on the podcast to talk about it again. Edie Patterson is well, her voice. Yeah, I was going to say she's on this one, but it's her voice. She's
Yeah.
like someone calling in. She's playing Tim Heidecker's wife,
Okay.
or they're going through a divorce or whatever. And just, I mean, it was just hilarious. So I know we talked about the Righteous Gemstones on here before, and it definitely, had some of those vibes. She's
Yeah.
just hilarious, and the running theme throughout, also the Haggerty part, but there's a lot of stuff about demons, which maybe I'm like kind of a sucker for in terms of like Heidecker had on this woman as a guest who claimed that she could tell by looking at someone's eyes what percentage demon they were. And it was, I don't know, it was just really, really funny, I thought. So I do want to shout that out. I recommend it a lot.
I need to check some of these out. I mean, you've seen, I think, all the ones that have come out so far. I haven't watched anything since the May special, but I will at some point sit down and go through these. So you said they're weekly on Thursday, I think I heard you say.
Yeah, they put it out as a live stream on Thursday. I think it's at, mm, I can't remember if it's 8 p.m. Eastern or 8 p.m. Central. It's one of
Yeah.
those.
Okay. Okay.
Because of course they're based in Chicago, so they're in Central
Yeah.
Time, as are you, right?
Yeah.
But it's different for me. But then after that, they do split them up as YouTube videos. So like if you want to go back and just watch the Heidecker portions on their own,
Oh,
you could
okay.
also do that. You
Okay.
don't have to watch the way
Yeah.
that they quote unquote air it originally. But with this last week's, I would kind of recommend it because I don't know, it was just I enjoyed the Haggerty part more than I had anything
Yeah.
previously. You had this woman on where she was doing this kind of she was playing like a parody of a trad wife kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um and anyway, it was pretty funny.
So
And then and
something you said made me think of a conversation I had this week. This is only loosely TV related, but I was for the first time introduced my teenage son to The Onion this week with a conversation we had, and we were able to laugh over and bond over an Onion piece that was titled "Parents Sit Down for Difficult Conversation with Their Kids About Moving to Add to Your Streaming." Right. And
yeah.
so, and so he got that because, that's like his worst nightmare is if I replaced his, his Netflix and his other things with, the ad versions of it. But, yeah, he's now fallen a little bit in love with Onion and some of the stuff, finding it all for the first time.
Cool. I mean, they've kept up with the times. I think, some of the old stuff still hits too in funny ways. I appreciate the young. And the first time I encountered it, I was what? How old was I? I was probably like 16 or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I went to Boulder, Colorado to take part in a jazz camp,
Oh, okay.
because I used to play trombone. That's all right, right? I think you also used to play trombone,
I
right?
did
Too?
for 3 years. Yes,
We got a lot in common already.
that's right.
Um, but I was in jazz band and we played at this festival or whatever, and it was like I won a scholarship to this jazz camp for my solo or something, which
Okay.
I don't know how proud to be of that, and particularly in retrospect, like because like we had to pay for my travel expenses and all of
Yeah,
that,
yeah, exactly.
so
Exactly.
um but yeah, it was in Boulder, Colorado, and they had the Onion around, sitting in little newsstands, hard copies of it, which
Yep.
weren't something that I'd encountered. Um Being in high school in Ohio at the time. There were other alt weeklies and stuff you would pick up, but I don't think they
Yes.
were doing the Onion. It was just like free at the time, as I
Yeah.
recall. It was just
That's
sitting there.
right.
Which I do appreciate also that they brought back the paper version. I don't know if you know this, but you can subscribe to the Onion and get it delivered to your house
Oh, is that right? I didn't
as a
realize that.
newspaper. Yeah.
Oh,
One of the things they've done since Ben Collins and others took over. Um, Anyway, let's stay away from that. The other thing that I watched I also was watching on YouTube. I think maybe it's available to watch otherwise. I don't know for sure. I know it's also available as a podcast, which started, a month and a half ago or so. And I just kind of let it sit there until this past week when I decided it was the kind of, we're in a dead period in terms of sports news a bit.
yeah.
So I don't know if you checked this out at all. Rich Eisen did a series of 6 episodes, each about an hour long, called "This Was Sports Center," and basically what he's doing is sitting down with someone who was on Sports Center back in the day. I think maybe in a couple
Yeah.
instances the person still is. Like Chris Berman's still there, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes. He is
uh,
nominally, I think, and part time, still there, still active. Yes.
yeah, it's like I don't know if he does anything besides show up on Monday Night Football in the halftime, like
Yeah,
but
that's right.
uh but that relates to the broader conversation I think we're all going to have here because Then news breaks just this week that they're laying people off. This is in part because of the merger with NFL Network. So I guess my first question, Ryan, is have you checked this out at all? Do you know what I'm talking about? This Rich Eisen series?
I have heard this actually is in my podcast feed. I've not listened to any of these, and but this is, as you and I are from the same same generation. This is right up my alley, right? This is certainly my speed of things that I will now, particularly because of what's been in the news lately, something I will listen to. It's a video podcast as I understand, right? You can do audio or video of this, right?
Yeah, I watched it on YouTube.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, I believe it is also available, as they say, wherever you get your podcasts, if you want to just,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
get the audio. I wonder, I should look into this at some point. This is a tangent, but Netflix is quote doing podcasts now. Like, can you get them in an RSS feed to download to your podcast app from
I,
Netflix?
I think so. At least I think the ones I
Yeah.
know they have an agreement right now with Spotify. So I think it's, anything that's in part of that agreement, you can certainly get as part of Spotify. But I don't know if all of their podcasts are available in that format.
Yeah, I hope so, because otherwise, in my mind, you should be able to call them podcasts. And I know that we're going to be talking business a little bit here, so this is still part of the tangent. But my
Yeah.
understanding is a part of why Netflix is labeling things as podcasts instead of talk shows is because
Right.
it gets around certain union rules in certain ways. Like if you label something as a talk show, you'd have to pay people more, basically.
Yeah.
So it's kind of whatever. Anyway,
I've been seeing a lot more recently the term vodcast. Have you seen this before? I've seen that a lot more frequently these days.
vodcast with a V.
Podcast, as you know, these blogs became vlogs, and now podcasts have become vodcasts.
Yeah, man, I know. I've seen that tons of times over the past decade. It's like it's like stop trying to make Fletch happen, kind of thing. It's not going to happen. It's not and I mean, it is interesting how this term podcast stuck, and
Exactly.
it makes no sense whatsoever. Um, Particularly since increasingly people even forget why that term originally, because it played on
Yep.
the iPod of all things. Um, but anyway, to pull it back here, as far as this with SportsCenter goes, definitely, we're the target audience, and others. I mean, it is definitely nostalgia, which I
Yeah.
often don't
Yeah.
endorse. But one of the things that I appreciated, and it varies a bit because he's always interviewing someone different. So, like, I think it's the first one where he interviews Dan Patrick, and it was like that might be the best one. They might
Mm.
have kind of ordered them in that sort of. Well, the one with Chris Berman is also really good. That's like the second one. So there
Yeah.
was. I did have a little bit of this experience of like, are we just kind of slowly, ticking down? I don't know, but they were all pretty entertaining. And it's not everyone, right? So I believe Rich Eisen wants to do more. Maybe they'll do a second season.
Hmm.
Whatever. But, tied up in that is not just the nostalgia of, remembering being a teenager or into college, even, in that area in the 90s, early aughts of,
Yeah.
watching the old Sports Center. Um, but also what makes the conversations interesting, in particular to me, is some of the kind of quote inside baseball stuff about like the production of Sports Center and what's going on behind the scenes. And so, in part it's nostalgia, but it's also, for me at least, an appreciation of the craft of what they were doing at the time that I enjoy.
Yeah, that is an interesting perspective of sort of looking at it from both ways. I do feel, having not heard or seen any of these, that it would probably be the nostalgia that hits me most. As we've said, we're the generation. I mean, this was literally on my TV every night for what, 8 years, 10 years? I mean, these same people over and over and over again. And no matter what I was doing, I would, before I go to bed, check in on Sports Center to see what happened, because that's where you saw highlights, and that's where you got sort of the most entertaining recap of what happened during the day. We're just so obviously proliferated now, and sort of where you can get content like that, and Sports Center is not that anymore. And so yeah, just would be interesting to check out. I'm sure I will at some point.
Yeah, and I mean the things hang together in a certain way, which I find interesting to think about because in part it is I don't know, the technological advancement or the speed of communication and the internet
Yeah.
the rise of the World Wide Web and all of this, which we're old enough to like recall happening when we were teenagers. Um, but that at the point when Sports Center started, and for a while, you know, actually all the way through the 1990s, um, it was done in a way that presumed that when you turned on Sports Center, you didn't know what had happened in the game yet,
Correct.
you know?
Correct.
And I appreciate that. I miss it. Like, so I don't even watch it anymore. I don't watch Sports Center. I can't recall the last time I watched Sports Center. Um, I mean, I vaguely can because it wasn't that long ago because I had this period a couple years ago where I was religiously watching Around the Horn and Pardon the Interruption
Yeah.
like every day, and then Sports Center comes on right afterwards. But I think I would always turn it off. But
Yeah.
before, you
Sports
know,
Center.
I don't know if they still do this or not because I know PTI is still on, right?
Mhm.
They canceled Around the Horn, which I was upset about. But it would go, they would have like the final segment of Part of the Interruption, like 10 minutes into Sports Center.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
No, I recall, I mean, this was back to being a teenager, going to Astros games and wanting to make sure that I was home, watch the highlights of the things that I'd just seen at the game. I just wanted to, oh, this was such an exciting thing. I want to see what Sports Center says about it. And I don't know, that's just lost over the years, I guess.
yeah, they don't do highlights in the same way. And I mean, I guess again, it makes sense. One of the things I thought was interesting, and I forget which conversation this was in, was about when management called a meeting, and the point of the meeting
Mm.
was we're going to start doing the ticker of the scores at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah.
And everyone who worked on Sports Center objected, right? But that's the thing. That's why I said with some confidence it was all the way through the 1990s because that happened after 9/11, right? Because 9/11 was really when everyone started doing that. That's when all the
Yeah.
news, CNN started doing that, and all the places, and then ESPN. And it really, that changed things. So that all makes sense, and it's maybe a little bit hard to parse what is just nostalgia. I mean, like if they really were to do it in the old style, would we watch it now when we
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
all this speedy, access to information? Um, I don't know, but another thing they talk about on there, and apologies to anyone listening who just like really doesn't care about sports or Sports Center. Um,
We are
but
getting to something very relevant shortly. Yeah.
what is about TV, and
Yeah.
Rich Eisen is interesting in this because he was let go by Sports Center long ago, um, and didn't want to be.
Yep.
And that was before he took the gig at NFL Network. And now he's back because of this business. I don't know, like, do you understand this? And it's like, whatever. It's like ESPN bought NFL Network, but now the NFL owns 10% of ESPN or something. That's a short version I have it up in my mind. Um, so anyway, Rich Eisen's back technically working for ESPN, and but then through the conversations, he also talks about almost all of these people left in one way or another,
Mhm.
um, and and how that went down, and so on and so forth. Um, and again, now we've got the news in part because of that merger or whatever the right term exactly is for kind of convoluted business deal, as I understand it. Um, they've laid off Ryan Clark apparently mid-show. I have to agree. I was watching Mike Florio's PFTPM. He called it Bush League. I agree. Um, his point being like they didn't want him to find out otherwise. They wanted to tell him himself. And I don't know if you agree with this, but Florio was like, "All right, that makes sense." There's a range of bad possibilities here, right? And you're right that him finding out on the internet or whatever, would be a bad way for it to go. But that is just
Yeah.
above you telling him while he's on the air. That is actually a worse option.
Well, my understanding of this is the timeline was right because the Ryan Clark news leaked first. I guess this was on Monday, and so that leaked a story from the Athletic, I want to say, and then as that leaked, obviously it started blowing up online. And so I think what their fear was is that, in a commercial break for the show, he's going to find out on his when he checks his phone that he's been let go. And so they just immediately, when the show went to break, grabbed him and told him and took him off midair just to try to, save their skins from him not finding out through, other means.
I don't know, man. Let him finish the show. It is all I can say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because maybe you would take the chance that he'd find out because he's checking his phone or something. But I don't know. Do they do that? That should be against the rules, in my opinion. Anyway, I'm sure it's not. It's
Yeah.
try not to go on too much of a rant about how I do feel like there have been declining sort of production standards and so on at
Yeah. Yeah.
ESPN. That's part of why I don't tend to watch it anymore.
It's sort of
Um,
like you fire a preacher at a church. You don't give him the next Sunday to get up in the pulpit and give a final sermon. You're afraid he's going to air all the dirty laundry. I think they just don't want him finding out and then going on the air and saying, what the hell? Here's what I'm about to go on some kind of rant, and they have to cut to black or whatever that they end up doing.
I guess it just strikes me as unprofessional. And then,
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
like,
the whole thing.
yeah, I mean, if he had found out on his own during a commercial break and had proceeded to go on a rant on the air, that would have been unprofessional on his part. So it's like you're
Exactly.
not trusting him to not do that and be a
Correct.
professional about it. Anyway, in my opinion, I've already said a couple times I don't really watch ESPN anymore. So I guess probably they don't really care about me. They've already lost me. And maybe there are those who are still on board for what they're doing, which I guess is going to be
Yeah.
what, like even more Pat McAfee, who
Yeah. So this to me is a
and Stephen
conversation
A.
about.
Smith.
Yeah, this is a conversation about trade-offs and opportunity cost, right? The idea that to be able to afford or um, retain your Pat McAfee's and your Stephen A. Smiths and the others who are big personalities, you have to let go of people like Ryan Clark, who I'm indifferent or agnostic on. I don't, care one way or the other. But people like Carl Ravitch and Stefan Neville, I am followed for more than 20 years. I mean, Carl
Yeah,
Ravitch is part of that group. When it was baseball season, I watched Baseball Tonight and Sports Center, and Carl Ravitch and Peter Gammons were always a part of that. And so you lose. Carl Ravitch just called Sunday Night Baseball or Monday Night Baseball right before this all happened, and so you lose some of this. Um, I'm sure they're all professional, but sort of a level of professionalism and expertise that ESPN was known for to get, bolder, bigger, more prominent voices, I guess. And I just am not one that's a fan of that trade-off.
yeah, I mean neither. Also, Tom Pelissero has been let go, who I'm a fan of. He's actually of the quote NFL insiders, whatever. He's kind of my favorite one, whatever that's worth. So I don't know, like, and I'm curious to see what those people do. I mean, it's also part of the shifting landscape where I feel like a lot of stuff does go on through podcasts, through YouTube or whatever. Like
Yeah,
Mina Kimes at this point is probably the one person at ESPN whose work I do really enjoy, at least off the top of my
yeah,
head. I mean, I guess if they're still doing PTI, Mike and Tony are cool. Um, but I struggle to think of more that I would list. And even with that, like I'll watch Mina Kimes on YouTube, and I think what I'm watching generally is not through ESPN.
yeah,
I'm not positive what their arrangement is in the background of that, but personally, I have really no interest in Pat McAfee. I don't enjoy watching him, and part of it I think is almost irrational or something, some weird
yeah.
distaste. Like I always want him to sit down and put a real shirt on, and that probably makes me like a boomer or something. Um, and then Stephen A. I feel like he's always yelling. Anyway, it's probably enough on all of this. And it's just so sad to see what's going on. Um, and also how, with this merger with the NFL Network, it makes me feel like have we lost the NFL Network? Because in a way, the NFL Network would be or felt for a while like a different kind of option, at least with regard to getting football
Yeah,
coverage
yeah,
that felt different. And I believe they're continuing to do the NFL Network,
Mhm.
will it continue to feel different, or will it have that kind of, I don't know, will it be like some ESPNification of it,
That's
you know?
exactly the phrase I was about to use. I mean, t Tom Pelissero is just he's caught up in a numbers game here. When you buy the NFL Network, you get Ian Rappaport and you get Tom Pelissero. And when you already have Adam Schefter, sort of
Yeah.
what's the need for, a third breaking news guy? And so you're not going to fire Schefter or Rappaport. So Pelissero is the one to go.
Yeah, exactly. Curious to see what all these people do moving forward. I mean, I presume that they'll do something, you know.
Yeah.
But kind of a sad day. And I know we've gone long on this, but one final point I did want to hit a little bit is you see in a lot of the coverage of this, people saying, well, but it's business reasons, and like you just did it a little bit. And I think that's perfectly fair what you just said, because that's true, right?
Yeah.
So you have redundancies, and that makes sense. And of course, like all of this makes sense from a certain point
Yeah.
of view. So I'm not disputing that. What I'm trying to somehow articulate is at the same time, or on a flip side of that, what they're doing for, you know, putatively business reasons to help their bottom line or whatever is like losing me as a consumer of their product. And then I don't know
Yeah.
how many people are like me. And then, yeah, if you're just thinking about it as a business, you can do the calculation and say, well, hey, sorry, Cameron, more people like Pat McAfee and more
Yeah.
people like Stephen A. Smith, and people are tuning in for that stuff. And not enough people watched Around the Horn. So that's
Mhm.
gone. You know what I mean? And if that's true, and it's just a shame. And then I don't know.
Yeah.
Then that's why I ultimately am like, okay, well, let me go find some YouTubers I'd
Well,
prefer to watch and listen to.
That's exactly what I was going to say. The one, well, not benefit from this, but I guess silver lining is the fact that we live in an age where it is not hard to put independent, less shackled voices out there for the things that you want to hear and the people you want to hear from. I mean, you can get these people out in a variety of ways and a variety of places, whether it's on their own or in some other program. We had this conversation when we talked about Underdog, right? And the idea that
Yeah,
we can take these guys, and whether it's with another company or on their own, we can hear them tomorrow if we wanted to. And so we're not at least in the 90s where it was Sports Center or nothing.
yeah, it's true. It's just a shame that's just because there is a side of that too, where it's like, okay, well, but then most people at least aren't making Chris Berman money anymore. They aren't making Olbermann money even, or whatever, from like what SportsCenter used to be paying people,
Right.
and bang, I think McAfee's making a lot of money. Anyway, so we'll leave it all there, I guess, um, and try to shift gears here. Yeah, apologies if anyone doesn't care about all the sports stuff, but I mean, with SportsCenter as a jumping off point and this Rich Eisen series, which I have been watching this week, I really do have those memories of,
Yeah.
one thing we didn't talk about along those lines. You talked about rushing home to see how they covered on the highlights, but also like the fact that they would rerun the same SportsCenter all night.
Yeah.
There were times when I would like leave it on.
Yeah. You just didn't care. Yeah.
Uh, or you could get in that kind of expectation of, oh, it's late at night, I'm going to turn on SportsCenter, and then like, oh, it's halfway through, well, whatever, I'll just wait until it starts over again
Yep.
and see the first half.
Yep. Yep.
And they don't do that anymore because it's just it wouldn't make the same kind of sense
You're
anymore,
right.
right? um all right, so shifting to a couple other things in the news here. Where should we start? Maybe let's jump to the X-Files thing. We were talking about it briefly before we hopped on. That I don't know that there's really news here, but there are at least rumors about this, that with Ryan Coogler's X-Files reboot pilot, which I think is complete at this point.
Yeah, that has been reported that the new X-Files reboot, the pilot, the 2 hour pilot is done. It is in
Yeah.
post-production. It is about ready to go.
So there's some rumors in the air about the possibility of being released to theaters. Um, I don't know. There are a few ways in which that might go, and I'm not sure exactly what the source of this is. I feel like it's just some remark that might have been a little bit more off the cuff than something to read into, but I don't know. Thoughts here, Rod?
Yeah, so that this is certainly, at least from what we have been able to find as of Wednesday, July 22nd, uh, at most rumor or speculation because of how he shot this pilot. You know, thoughts generally on this are I certainly can't classify myself as an X-Files super fan, having not seen 98% of the show. I will be watching this new adaptation. So my only hope is that if they're going to release it in theaters, wonderful. I hope that's great. I hope it's successful, sort of like Stranger Things did when they released their finale. But I certainly hope it's also simultaneously released on streaming, so that someone like me who's not going to go pay $20 to watch it in theaters can still see it from my couch.
Yeah, I agree, and I presume that would be the case.
Yeah,
But I believe also, and sorry, I should have double checked some of these things before we started recording, but if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong in the comments or whatever. I believe we are actually still at the point where they've completed the pilot, but it hasn't officially been picked up to series.
that is correct. Yes.
Which does feel odd, but we saw with the attempt at a Buffy reboot, for example,
Hmm.
which I think, I and most people kind of thought, well, it's Buffy the Vampire Slayer, of course it's going to happen. Well, no, it didn't.
Yeah.
So nothing's certain here, although I would expect that they will order this a series. And I'm mentioning that because that's another possibility that might have been related to this remark that of saying, well, if they don't pick it up the series, we'll release it as a movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That's true. They have that option. Yep.
so I don't know what's going to happen here, but I'm with you for sure. I want to check this out. I hope it is a series. I'm really intrigued by some of the stuff I've read about how it is supposed to be in universe with the
Yeah.
existing seasons of the X-Files. Um, which I mean, whatever. The mythology is messy enough that it's like I used to make this joke that the truth is out there, but no one knows what it is. Even Chris Carter doesn't know what it is. Make it up as it goes along. Um, but I do really enjoy the X-Files, even the bad stuff, even the even season 9, I can get behind. So we'll see on that front, but hopefully it gets picked up a series. And as you say, I agree. Hopefully it just goes. I mean, if they want to show it in theaters too, fine.
Yeah. Wonderful. Do it.
Yeah, fine, do it. Yeah, yeah, exactly like with Stranger Things. But um, I can't remember the last time I've been to the theater. A lot of people were talking about the Odyssey this week, and even
Mm.
there, I found myself having this, yeah, because this is one people are like, well, you need to see it in like the right
Yeah.
aspect ratio in IMAX and all of this, and I still found myself saying like, I wonder when it'll be available to stream on my
Yeah.
computer. uh,
Well, we are going tomorrow, Thursday, and we are driving across town to the IMAX theater to see it. So I'll report back on if it was worth it to pay that much and drive that far.
yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's like I'm not actually the biggest Christopher Nolan fan, but anyway, we're supposed to be a TV podcast, so let's not get too sidetracked. I am a fan of RoboCop and
Ah, yes.
the original film, Paul Verhoeven film, if I'm saying his name right, from the 1980s. I think 1987 is the date. It kind of sticks in my memory, Ryan, because I saw that movie in the theater, um, and I would have been 7, maybe
Oh
6 years
gosh.
old.
Oh wow. Yeah. I can't claim that. I do think this was the second. I've told you before about how Cape Fear was the first R-rated movie I ever saw. I think this was the second when I was
Yeah.
maybe 10 years old.
I don't know. I mean, it was like I feel like my dad used to just take me to the movies he wanted to see.
Yeah.
I don't know, take that as you will in terms of parenting tips. But anyway, like RoboCop was one where it was. I mean, a lot of this stuff, whatever, like Die Hard, even, or I think
Yeah.
whatever. But the one scene in RoboCop where the guy like melts in toxic waste or whatever, that kind of traumatized me a little bit. Anyway, I've revisited it multiple times as I've been older, and in particular that first film, um, I love. And when they did a reboot of it, however many years ago now, maybe it's been a decade.
2014. 2014.
Yeah, I still haven't seen that. It looked like they had kind of sanitized it in a way I wasn't terribly
Yeah.
interested in. I think it was rated PG-13. I was like, did you see that one? Did you watch that
No,
reboot?
I have not seen that one.
Um, and so with that, I had some curiosity, but it wasn't enough to actually get me to see it because it didn't feel like it was going to be in the spirit of the first RoboCop film. And I know I've also seen the second RoboCop film, but I think I only saw it when it came out, and at that point too, I was still only probably like 9 or something.
Yeah, right.
And I didn't think it was very good. And then I think they did more after that I may or may not have seen and don't remember. The first one, I think it's quite good. So when I first saw the headline here, I did have a little bit of trepidation,
Mm.
but when I read the article and started digging into it and who's involved in it, I'm actually pretty excited about this. What about you?
Yeah, they are very interested. This is going to be a Prime Video series, 8 episode season that is ready to go. Or not ready to go, but it's going to happen. This has been in
Yeah.
development for 3 years. So we don't have a date on when we'll get it, but it seems like they want to be very honest and very true to the original film, focusing on corporate greed, sort of looking at the idea of individualism and what it means to, sort of have this control, not have this control, really sort of have a takedown of sort of the corporate sort of oversight that we have these days. So they want to be very true to that spirit of the original film. So that certainly helps me, and I imagine you're feeling the same way. It helps me buy in a little bit more.
Yeah, because an interesting thing happened with RoboCop where it kind of shifted in the direction of the 80s were weird, man. Like they were making kids' toys of RoboCop, I think, and it was like
For the
first of
radar
all,
movie, absolutely, yeah.
going back to where I started, that first one not a kids movie. You know what I mean? It's really dark. And the thing is, there's also like a tragedy about it, you know? Uh, I don't know, whatever. I'll withhold the spoiler I was about to get into just in case anyone's gonna be like, oh, don't spoil a movie from 1987. But if people haven't seen it, I do recommend it. And yeah, the fact that you got with this planned series, which I guess has been given a series order, is going to happen. The Bloomhouse is involved in the production side, but then the name's involved
Yeah,
too. You have people who were involved even in the original film, big fan. I mean, it's like it sounds like a creative group here that
yeah.
I trust to do something that I'm definitely going to be interested in watching. And there's also a way in which, this is not complementary to the reality we find ourselves living in 2026 real world. But there have been multiple times in my life, relatively recently, where I'm like, man, we had all these possible futures to choose from, and we chose the RoboCop one.
Yeah, I thought about our conversation from, I guess it was last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, where Alien Earth sort of was hitting on this theme about these corporations, these three massive uh, corporations that run the world, and just sort of how that permeated through the story. I imagine this will do something similar, and so I do sort of like this genre, as it were, and to just add, yeah, the sense of an honest to goodness, thinking about what RoboCop was and what they wanted him to do. I think I'll be bought into that.
Yeah. And I mean, if you recall, and this, if this feels like a spoiler, whatever, I apologize, but whatever. If you recall right, in the original film, because I don't know if people always recall this, the way it goes is the police officers union goes on strike. The police officers union is on strike, and RoboCop is actually this union busting measure or whatever. Anyhow, definitely a lot of social commentary there in that film, and hopefully the series, is in that same vein. Last news item that I had here, I was just really, it's on the new casting information for the series we're supposed to get from Netflix based around a casino called The Roman, starring Oscar Isaac, who I think is also involved behind the scenes. But did you look at this cast, man? This is like you got Vincent
Yeah,
D'Onofrio, Kate Mara, Clancy Brown, Jason Schwartzman. I mean, this is
I
stacked
think
cast.
we touched on this when it was just Betty Gilpin and Alec Baldwin, or maybe a couple other names
Yeah,
beyond
I
that. I
think
want to say
so.
maybe we touched on that. It's interesting. I was just reading something recently that was basically the theme was, what happened to Netflix's prestige offerings? And so I wonder if this is a sort of a pivot back in that direction a little bit. We just know that it's going to be a Vegas drama series. Don't know much about necessarily the content. Oscar Isaac is also in this, what we know. So maybe it's a pivot back in that direction a little bit. But Netflix has kind of taken this turn towards just whatever the algorithm tells it should be, whether it's reality or documentary or soapy or teen. So I hope this is a real sort of adult series that we can get behind.
Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, the last time with Netflix in particular, where the big thing grabbing me was, hey man, look at this cast, was Death by Lightning, and I quite enjoyed
Mhm,
that.
mhm,
But
mhm.
and I like history too, and politics and all that kind of stuff. I'm maybe a little bit less interested in casinos, but
Yeah.
when it comes down to it, I mean, like the cast itself is probably enough to get me to at least give this a shot.
Yes. Yes.
So if it's actually well done and so on, um, no date or anything. This is on the horizon still.
Yeah.
I mean, this is new. It's like they just cast these people I was mentioning, or the news just coming out that they cast them. So it'll be down the line. We'll keep our eye out for when it'll finally come out. But yeah, I mean, some of these people, look, man, like you got Clancy. I know these aren't the headliners, right? But for me, you tell me that something has Clancy Brown and Betty Gilpin in it, and I'm like, oh, I'm intrigued.
Yeah. It's Jason Schwartzman as the eighth lead or something in the show.
Yeah. You ever watch Bored to Death, by the way? With,
I don't think
I enjoyed
so.
that. I
No.
enjoyed that show. I feel like it was never as popular as it should have been or whatever. Starring Jason Schwartzman, where he's like a kind of he's kind of like a millennial PI in Brooklyn or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good show. I think it might have gotten canceled ultimately. I don't know if they got to end it on their own terms. Anyhow, there's something that presumably will get to make on their own terms because already they're renewed for season 4. We're in the middle of season 3 of Silo on Apple TV. Really looking forward to talking about this week's episode with you, Ryan. But to let everyone know, spoilers are going to be on the table here for everything through the first 4 episodes of season 3 of Silo, the TV series. No spoilers from the books is our promise here. If you're worried about that, I'm worried about that, and I haven't read the books. And it makes it like kind of hard to engage with some stuff on the internet because I'm worried if I'm not familiar with the source that like book spoilers are going to creep in. I want to avoid them.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, we'll put a little bit of music in here as always, and on the other side, we'll be talking about Silo.
Okay, we're here to talk about Silo on Apple TV, Season 3, Episode 4. Whatever you do, don't go home. Written by Jessica Blair and directed by Arik Avellino. In Washington, D.C., Daniel and Helen are trying to track down who stole the information that Stevens showed them about the Iran mission. To stay safe, Helen takes them to an apartment owned by an ex of hers named Palmer so they can sort out their next move. Daniel reaches out to an old military buddy named Sam who works at the Pentagon who's looking for some help, but Sam is reluctant to get involved with them. They are then approached by the mysterious man who's been appearing around them lately, and he promises Daniel and Helen a second chance if they will stop digging around the Iran story, but also seems to threaten to take Charlotte off of her medical care. Daniel and Helen decide to part ways, but later in the week, Daniel gets a call from Sam, who says he has something that they are, quote, not going to believe. Daniel picks up Helen, and they drive off to go meet Sam. In Silo 18, Camille begins making her plans to kill Juliet and tells the guard Emerson and Nurse Amy to make sure that she is unconscious. However, the nurse gives Emerson the shot and helps Juliet escape, sacrificing herself to the raiders so Juliet can get away. Elsewhere in the silo, the outsiders debate with Lucas Kyle about what is actually happening outside the silo, and Lucas tells them what they see in the helmets is a fake and it is uninhabitable outside. Billings also continues to investigate Orla Kent's disappearance and death with a new shadow to the head of supply. At the end of the episode, Juliet reunites with Shirley, and the two go into an old entrance near the Digger Void they thought was closed off by Walker. Juliet makes her way down and discovers down there an injured but very much alive Bernard. That's quite the reveal at the end of this episode. Maybe we should sort of start or build to that. I would say this idea of Bernard being alive was somewhere in the neighborhood of rumored to expected. Was this a surprise to you based on what we knew before? Did you think that this was coming? Sort of, it seems all sort of roads led to this. So how shocked were you by this revelation?
I was relatively shocked, although there was a way in which the episode built to it that made me less shocked than I might have been otherwise, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
Um, it is odd that I'm more into the show than I've ever been. I'm writing on it each week. People can read my recaps on TVObscast.com. And of course, I wrote on season 1, and we podcasted together on season 2, and you wrote on season 2, and now I'm writing on season 3. Um, and part of that was, at least from my perspective, after season one, I was like, I don't know. I mean, I like this show all right, but I'm not super into it. And I knew you were in terms of that, decision for you to write on season two, as I recall. Anyhow, now, I mean, I'm totally in. And so I am the kind of person who wants to also go read other stuff and maybe, you
Yeah.
know, listen to other podcasts and YouTubers and stuff like that. But I'm hesitant to go beyond my comfort zone because I'm afraid that they're going to give book spoilers. And it's like
Yeah.
I have a couple of people where I know that they won't, right? Like I think I mentioned Miscellaneous Gab on here last week. I know she hasn't read the books. All right. Pete Peppers, I know has read the books, but I trust him to not tell me. He's made that promise, and I trust him. I've watched his stuff for a while.
Yeah.
Anyway, um, so I don't know. I hadn't, I guess, in a very long-winded way, I'm saying I hadn't really heard the rumors that you were talking about or read them. But I do recall our conversation a few weeks ago, which I think was right
Mhm.
after the premiere, where I think we agreed with a degree of certainty that Bernard was definitely dead. So there's something to re-examine here, and I have a line of interpretation on all of this. I don't know if we want to start there, or I guess we already have to some degree. But what are your thoughts here about Bernard being alive?
Yeah, so it allows for, I guess, a fuller conversation about this whole thing, because at least to a certain point in the books, we learn that Bernard is not dead, and so that sort of we're now, I guess, back on track, as it were, with keeping with the story. It was interesting to see, and I was with you when we saw his death, quote unquote, back in what looked like the first episode ambiguity about it. And so this does come a little bit of a shock that we're going to see this. However, it does track with maybe keeping with the honesty of what we know, at least to this point in the story in the books, not going beyond this, but he is alive. And it just seems like this is going to trigger something pretty massive going forward. I know I've expressed to you in the past couple of episodes about just sort of the circular sort of cat and mouse. We're going to do this all season. Now we can kind of propel some things forward that maybe we wouldn't have been able to if Bernard was not around.
Yeah, and I'm by no means unhappy. I found myself thinking about this quite a bit, and writing about it more maybe in my recap article for this week. If people want to go read it, then we will get into here. That should be out by the time you're listening to this. By the way, go to TVObscast.com. But like, I feel like the reason why we were relatively certain, or there was like a lack of ambiguity, was because of what we saw on the screen and that basic kind of rule of television that what you see is reality unless it is clearly marked as a dream sequence or hallucination or
Yeah,
something,
yeah,
or it's clearly marked that we're playing with perspective and you're seeing it from someone's perspective. Or like when we talked about disclaimer, it was like, okay, what we're seeing is a portrayal of the events in the book
yeah.
that's within the show or whatever. And that's not quite going on here. Um, and it made me think back to the scene. There's a bit in season one. I, I don't know why the show would want to remind me of this. Maybe I didn't think about it. But do you remember when the power went out and it was like through the cafeteria window, it was showing that it was nice outside?
Oh, yes, yes. The screen glitched. Yeah.
I got so hung up on that it never occurred to me that they were projecting the stuff inside the helmets. Like even after
Yes.
I'd watched the season finale, you can go look at that recap. There's someone yelling at me in the comments. I'm like, oh, it never occurred to me. What about this thing in the previous episode?
Yep.
So anyway, I don't know if this is quite the same because maybe there's a way in which it's not violating the rule as I sit with it, but it would have to be like, okay, what we saw happened, but what
Hmm.
we didn't see was then, Sims pokes a hole in his mouth, because he's like wrapping the guy's face in saran wrap.
Yeah.
And then you can say, okay, well, it's a fake. They burned someone else's body and they were pretending it was Bernard's body. All right, that's fair enough. But it's particularly that scene where it definitely seems like he's suffocating him, you
Yeah.
know? So is there a reason why he would have to wrap him in plastic like that? I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see if there are more things along similar lines because it does have me thinking about this question of whether the show is violating that kind of norm I was talking about. I mean, we're already in a series where we can't take anything anyone says as face value, but can we believe our eyes as TV viewers? That's a dangerous game, to do this kind of thing that makes you start thinking you also have to question that. So,
Yeah. And that was, I think, I've talked to you, I think, about the disadvantages of reading some of these things. And this was certainly one of them. The idea that it would be really weird if they stuck with this idea that Bernard is dead based on, again, I've not read the third book yet, but based on just things I know that are to come, it would be odd to do this without Bernard. And so it's always just sort of been in the back of my brain that this could happen. But then what I remain curious about or interested in is, okay, well then who, I guess I have to land right now that this was Sims that
yeah.
saved him or put him there. And so, okay, what's the reason for that? Trying to go against Camille's wishes, trying to, sort of circumvent what's happening with Camille and the legacy. So I am very, very interested now where that goes.
Yeah, I mean, I've pieced that together pretty thoroughly, and you almost have to do it in retrospect, but I'll give it to people listening. Again, you can find this in my recap article for sure if you want it like in written form, and it might almost be clearer. But yeah, I think it has to be Sims, and it means that retrospectively, there's a number of things to kind of reinterpret, as it were. So, over the course of this episode, as you mentioned in your summary, Nurse Amy helps Juliet escape, right? And then says, I've been helping you regain your memory, right? And Juliet's like, I've been spitting out my pills. She's like, I stopped giving you the real meds even before you did that. Someone asked me to. You're going like, who? Then, as you say, she creates a diversion for the Raiders, and she tells Juliet to go to this room number 76, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when Juliet gets to that room 76, who's there? Robert Sims.
Yep.
And he says something like, you got to listen to me, but she freaks out. Shirley shows up. They break off the door handle. They trap Sims inside. And then blah, 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 blah. And then we're discovering that Bernard's alive. So it seems pretty clear to me, at least, that Bernard is alive because Sims kept him alive secretly. Um, and why would Sims do that? Well, maybe it's because Bernard told him that Juliet had told Bernard that she knew how to disable the safeguard.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. There are people that already are, we've talked about the coalition building underneath Juliet and her support, but there's now the sort of the secret thing of people that know very limited pieces of information, but very helpful pieces of information that could help push back against whatever it is that Camille is doing with the algorithm. Sim shows up, I think, at the very beginning of this episode and offers whatever assistance, whatever help his wife needs. But now we clearly know that he is secretly, or we can now strongly presume that he is secretly working against her in some way to prevent what she and the algorithm are trying to do.
Well, and this part I think is interesting because I don't know if it's as straightforward as to say that he's working against Camille, um, at least in terms of what he'd be telling himself here, right? Because Camille, of course, is being coerced by the algorithm. I mean, she's presented with things as though she has a choice, but is it really a free
Yeah.
choice? Yeah, it's largely a forced choice. It's kind of like kill Juliet, or I'm going to kill
We're gonna,
everyone. You know what I mean?
we're
It's
gonna
like
wipe out everything. Yeah,
not
exactly.
quite a a free choice. And so I think that Robert would be telling himself that even if he's hiding things from his wife and practicing some deception, he's
Hmm.
really doing it in a way that is in line with her interests, but they can't even talk about it safely.
Correct.
She can't know. And so he is in line. That's a running theme throughout this whole series in a certain way. And it's
Yeah.
always something to question. One of the things I always like to play with my own mind is, like to what extent stuff like this is justifiable.
Yeah.
And where I'm at, it's like I don't think that Sims is suddenly a good guy, but
No.
it does make some sense to me as I'm piecing it together along these lines. And if people don't remember, I mentioned this a minute ago, but just make clear, you could revisit the end of season 2 in that scene between Juliet and Bernard, that dialogue I'm pulling on here, right? Because Juliet says she doesn't know who's behind it. Bernard says he knows who, but he doesn't know why, and he doesn't care anymore.
Mhm.
But also in that dialogue, Juliet does say something to him about how she knows how to disable the safeguard. I forget exactly how she puts it. You have to double check the dialogue, but that's the point of it.
That's right.
Um, so if Bernard was able to convey that to Sims,
That's what I'm going to say. Yep. Yep.
yeah, then of course Sims also feels spurred. I mean, by Bernard before, right? He's like supposed to be Bernard's
Yeah.
shadow, but then the algorithm rejects him and is like, "No, I'm only going to talk to Camille and get out of here, Robert."
Yeah.
Um,
To
and
to what extent do you think the algorithm hears all, knows all, sees all? I mean, it can't hear every conversation, but it seems like it knows most things.
good, good, good. It's really interesting to me the extent that it doesn't.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know that we have all the details. We know from previous seasons they have or at least had cameras all over the place.
Yes.
There were some indications in the beginning of season 3 that maybe they got rid of some of the cameras. Did they? Didn't they? I don't know how much surveillance is there, but like I would guess that whatever is being surveilled in that way would be fed into the algorithm.
Part of the reason why
Um,
Walker and her team came up with their own sign language, basically.
yeah, but if you the fact that this season has given us those scenes where Camille's talking to the algorithm,
Hmm.
like I don't love those scenes, but they do provide food for thought, for a lot of questions, including this one, because it
Yeah.
definitely seems like the algorithm needs Camille to provide it with information during those
Yes, I
scenes.
think so.
So it's definitely not, it doesn't have some kind of God's eye perspective on everything in the
Right.
silo.
That's where I've landed as well. It's certainly not omnipresent. It needs its protege, its eyes in the on the ground, boots on the ground there to inform it of certain things that it just can't know.
Yeah. But then this is one of those things that makes me start wondering, like, well, why not? When you're setting up the silo, why not make it more omniscient? And
Yeah.
it's one of those things that keeps feeding into the theory in the back of my mind, like maybe this is some complicated social experiment kind of thing, because some of these little details, you're like, I'm not sure if it even fully makes sense
Yeah.
why they're doing this. So I'm searching for an explanation. Anyway, dialing back to what we do know. Bernard's alive. I think it has to
Yep.
be Sims. I don't think there could be any other
Yep.
explanation. You have to imagine that he did something like poke a hole in the saran wrap so that Bernard could breathe after what we saw before.
Yeah.
Um, or the show was just lying to us visually.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
and Martha's involved. What do you think there?
Mhm.
Because
In what
she
way?
was, well, look, the official story is that she sealed access to the digger point where they find Bernard.
Yes. Yes.
But it's not like completely sealed up. There's a
Right.
sign that says, no access or whatever, but
Yeah.
it's actually a door. And
Hmm.
behind that door is Bernard. So this is what's leading me to think that Martha's involved.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder what degree we've talked about the different groups they're forming, right? To what degree there is a um not Shirley group that's sort of kept in mind this idea of rebellion and wanting to know the truth. There are the outsiders, which we clearly know their perspective and what they're trying to uncover. And maybe Martha is kind of splitting between the Knox Shirley group, and now there is a sort of Sims secret group with Martha, Sims, Bernard. Now Juliet's going to be a part of this. I don't see how it could be much bigger than that. It doesn't seem that Knox and Shirley in that group are aware of any of this.
No, I don't think they are. And I don't think Kennedy and the outsiders are either, although there are indications that they're on their way, right? Because
Yeah.
Lucas ultimately convinces them to like, hey, let's go find Juliet and ask her. So I think these various groups are going to come together and share information. At least that's my hope.
Yes. Yes.
And then there's one other thread. And I found myself wondering even more after this episode than previous ones, where's Carla McClain? Right? Like,
Mm.
do people even recall that she's been a character in this show? Like, they keep talking about her in the season, but we haven't seen her, right? She's like Martha's
Right.
ex-wife, right?
Last
Um,
we saw her, she was imprisoned, and Martha agreed to help Bernard to get her out, right?
right, back in season two, you
Yeah.
know? So I have no idea. I haven't really tried to score casting information or whatever. They could always hide things anyway. Like I literally don't know if the actress is in the season.
Yeah.
Um, but she should be. Yeah, they keep talking about her, right? So where's she, right? And that's what's led me to kind of think, okay, well, if that was supposed to be sealed and it's not, that makes me think Martha's involved. And then now I'm jumping to think, okay, Carla's also involved to maybe even greater degree. Like the reason we haven't been seeing Carla is because she's been tending to Bernard and the secret.
Yeah, that's true.
And then unfortunately, I do start wondering if they're the ones who are stealing stuff from supply for the sake of
Mhm.
Bernard, because we've got this other question of who killed Orla Kent. And it's like I sort of refuse to believe that it could have been Martha or Carla, but I guess I could believe it if it was Robert Sims.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you're, I think you're onto something here. It, hmm. I'm trying to think if there are others that could be involved in this. I think the Orla Kent thing is it does remain a mystery, but it remains the biggest mystery to me is like how these groups could intersect. Because clearly that's something Billings is still doing, trying to figure this out. If it's important enough of a mystery that we're spending every episode looking into this. And so are these two things overlapping in some way? But I hadn't even thought about the idea that, oh, yeah, maybe there are things being used out of supply to keep, we didn't know Bernard was alive, but there now we know that supply may have been a supplier of things to keep, Bernard alive in some way, and that there was this consciously or unconsciously the people there were helping. That has to be, or I would say there's a strong indication now that this is these are going to be tied together in some way.
Yeah, that's kind of my prediction about how these threads come together. And then, so sort of through the Orla Kent investigation, that ends up bringing in Billings and what's the other guy's name? He hasn't been in the season much. Murphy, I think is his name.
Oh
The
yeah,
other
yeah,
cop
you're right, Murphy. Yeah,
he hasn't been in this all that much, but I don't know. That's my prediction. At least I hope this doesn't take six more episodes, but
yeah.
it probably will. Probably will. I'm keeping my expectations along the lines of this show has historically had a really slow pace, and I'm not expecting everything to come together until the end of the season. But
Hmm.
so far, I don't know if you agree, but so far I feel like this season hasn't felt slow. It's felt like we're moving right along, and I'm enjoying it a lot.
Yeah, I would certainly say it's a faster pace. As a matter of fact, I think the last two episodes of the Silo stuff started moving faster than the Washington DC stuff, and so this,
Yeah,
yeah, the pace of what's happening in the Silo has certainly picked up. And as we sort of unravel these mysteries and peel back the layers of what's happening here, I think that it has gotten much more propulsive. And I predict, and this could kind of leads into the comment I wanted to make about Juliet and what she has done so far this season. I kind of predict that it's gonna that pace is going to keep up the rest of not only the rest of the season, but I think the rest of the series.
yeah.
The thing I wanted to comment on is before we move away from the silo is and I've looked at this. Rebecca Ferguson has addressed this. Their comments have been made publicly about this. The the Juliet amnesia storyline was fabricated, right? Was made up to it just seems like to get us to episode 5, basically, right? They just needed to put her in place where they could stall her so that they could get to the point where we meet Bernard and then we go and actually continue what happens to the rest of the story to the end of the series. I've talked before about how the book 2 does not include or barely includes Juliet and what's happening in Silo 18. And so, as you have pointed out, they're not going to sideline Rebecca Ferguson for a season to focus on other things. And so they kind of put her in this state where she could be pressed pause until we get to Bernard. And now that we have Bernard, we can move forward pretty fast. And I think
Yeah.
that we'll see both timelines start to really pick up as we move forward.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I hope so. You put something in our notes along these lines with the word controversy in quotes. Did you want to talk more about I mean, like,
Just the idea
a
of
lot of negative sentiments out there around this, or
Yeah, negative sentiments from those that have consumed the books that like this has never happened to Juliet. Why would you sort of neuter her in a certain way? Why would you put her in this position where she's got to remember all these things that have happened in the past 2 years? But basically, it was, I think they just couldn't align the two timelines of these things that are happening to make one sort of coherent movement towards them
Yeah.
meeting at the end or meeting next season at some point. And so now that that's over, I predict that now that we have Bernard and we have her off the meds, that her memory will start coming back a lot faster than it has before.
I presume so. Hmm, as far as this whole amnesia storyline with Juliet, I'm not the biggest fan of the kind of amnesia trope in general.
Hmm.
So it's not necessarily that aspect, but um, I mean, I did accept it here ultimately. I decided to. By and large, I would say I understand if you're talking about diverging from the book and maybe negative comments are coming from book readers. Um, you might be hard pressed to find someone who will defend this more stridently than I will.
Hmm. Hmm.
One, the TV show is not the book. Forget about it.
That's right. That's right.
Two, I actually put something to me. It's like the third or fourth time. Go read my recap on the. But I said something about this in the article I wrote on this one. I am of the mind that even if the reason is, hey, we can't sideline Rebecca Ferguson, we have to keep Rebecca Ferguson on our screens. We need to figure out a way to do that, and we can't straightforwardly adapt the books, because
Yeah. Yeah.
that this decision has made this series soar as a great television show
Hmm.
in a way that maybe seasons 1 and 2 weren't.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I think that this has actually been better television than the first two seasons of the show. And related to that, I was thinking about how, and we'll segue to the before time storyline here in a moment, but they've also, through these 4 episodes at least, managed a really um, good kind of parallelism
Yep.
between those stories, thematically, at least, if nothing else. I mean, you can think about the episode titles and the way in which it's like they managed so far to make the episode titles play in both
Yeah.
storylines. Like even in this episode, where the title of the episode is literally something Helen says to Daniel,
Yeah.
it also fits with the Juliet storyline.
Yeah.
What,
That's exactly right.
hey
Yeah.
Juliet, whatever you do, don't go home. You
Yeah,
know,
I am
um,
I am I am with you on this. I think that third season has really accelerated to a point that as much as there was so much good in season one and in some in season two as well, it's accelerated to the point where it is able to tell a very interesting story, not combining the timelines, but putting the two timelines in parallel of one another and resonating with these themes. And I think I remember telling you even before we started podcasting about this season is that, how much I thought that the second book was interesting, and the second book largely about this before time storyline, being able to say, okay, well, if this stuff is so good, let's draw from some of that and make it work sort of in tandem with what's happening in these two timelines. I think that has worked well. So you're not going to hear any complaints from me. It's just interesting that, this is far from the first show to be adapted from books where they've had to make wild changes. But yeah, it unlike maybe a Game of Thrones book or another one, you may not find many adaptations where it just completely removes the main character from a book for 600 pages of text. You're going to figure out what to do about that.
well, it would be a big risk to take on a TV series as opposed to a book
Yes,
for sure. But
correct.
but yeah, what I'm suggesting is for those reasons, whatever, you know, I think it's making it better television. I hope they
Yep,
keep it up, as you say. Like, I hope that you're right in what you were saying before with regard to the pacing and everything else. Because look, if I've had one criticism of this show through the first 2 seasons, it did
yep,
relate to the pacing and so on. But like,
yep,
how do you make sense of that? Well, one way to make sense of it is actually to think about it as an adaptation of the source material, where you say, okay, well, this is the bit of it that we're going to do in season 1. This is the beginning, this is the end, and
yes,
then we need to fill out the middle, and it's got to be 10 episodes. You know what I mean?
yes,
So,
yes,
if they're in sort of taking some liberties or moving away from the source material a bit, I don't know. I think that makes it um, maybe it makes it more open for them to think about just crafting a good TV show. And of course, you got Graham Yost behind the scenes here, who is a name, I've been familiar with for a while. I definitely hold him in some esteem as a showrunner and all of that. So,
Definitely. Definitely.
um, yeah, well, we need to talk about Daniel. We need to talk about Helen. We need to talk
Mhm.
about all this stuff. Maybe this is quicker. I don't know.
Yeah, okay. So I actually didn't think that much happened with them this
Okay.
episode. We have a conversation with the mystery man. We get I'm going to give you some big news. Come find it. But there's not too much else that a lot of just like, what's our next move conversations.
Yeah, I guess that's right. I guess that's right. But there are some questions here. I'll go ahead and point out, I mean, so they don't know what to do exactly when they find that Steve
Mm.
is gone, right? And I guess his name really is Steve. Helen says, so
Yeah.
whatever. Um, and like Daniel wants to call someone, she smashed his phone, whatever. And anyway, so she gives them the address and says, don't show up until 10 p.m. And when he gets there, it's a place that she says belongs to her ex named Palmer. We haven't seen. I don't know if we'll ever meet him. Well, like he's deployed in Sudan or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, should I be suspicious of Helen here? Or were you suspicious of Helen here at all? Is it just the show, um, like making me suspicious of everyone?
Yeah, I think it is trying to make us suspicious of everyone, particularly as we have, this dark web conversation and all that's going on. I have to say silent on some of this stuff, but I will say that anytime you get taken to a mysterious, very expensive looking apartment to some unnamed man who's off out on assignment, I do get sort of my ears perk up as to, what's actually going on here, that you just have access to this place whenever you want it.
Well, and those were sort of my questions. And why did Daniel have to wait? Why did she need Daniel to wait before he could show up? Was it in order to get Palmer's permission? Is she able to do that when he's on Sudan?
Yeah.
So did she not do that? Do they actually have this guy's permission to be in his apartment? Does she still have a key? Are they really broken up? He's got a huge picture of her on the wall.
Yeah. Does she need to
And
go scrub it of things he doesn't want Daniel to see before he gets there?
does she need to make sure she cleaned up adequately over his corpse that she after she murdered him last week? I don't know. It's just like I have
Yeah.
I really like Helen, by the way. I really like her character. So I hope she's not secretly a evil murderer or whatever. But um, yeah, I don't know. Just there was just enough there that I kind of wondered about, and that I'm not sure if it's going to be
Yeah.
important or not, or even if am supposed to be worried about it narratively. Um, but even further, like, okay, well, if this is supposed to be we're hiding out in a safe house kind of thing, and if this is going to your ex-boyfriend's apartment,
Yeah.
don't you think that the NSA knows where your ex-boyfriend lives?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I I got the impression that she's trying to reference that Palmer is on assignment, like maybe he's another journalist and he's out in Sudan. I don't know what international correspondent has got an apartment like that in Washington, D.C. So, I think there's something going on behind the scenes here, whether it's some shady things going on or this is not what she says it is. I think there's a lot more to be uncovered if they spend more time with that. I have no idea if they spend more time with this story of who this guy is and what this place is.
Yeah, and we haven't gotten a ton either about whatever she got in trouble about before in terms of making up a false story or something like that.
Yeah, I think Daniel sees a web page where she, yeah, made up a false source of some kind, but that's about all we know.
Right. But then, part of me wonders, did she, was that really false or what is the story there? Again, is that going to matter? I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, they kind of piece together this idea that Steve was actually using his chess game to communicate with someone. I didn't go back and look at the chess game, by the way. I'm past it. TV shows and movies just almost always get chess wrong, and it bothered me because I don't understand why. Like, it's not that complicated of a game. Oh, do you play chess? Do you
Yes,
play
I play
chess?
chess.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
this is like so like maybe you're with me on this, or maybe there are some exceptions, but it's just like there's so many instances where they'll use chess in a TV show, and it's like that's not how chess works. And I don't. It's like I don't understand why you can't get it better than that. Anyhow, Daniel says he saw that the move that Steve made didn't make sense.
Yeah.
He was exposing his king or whatever. So they're looking for whoever he was playing against, thinking he was trying to communicate with that person. That's why they contact Sam.
Hmm.
And Sam originally says, "Hey, like I enjoyed being in a band with you or whatever back in the day, but no, I'm not going to give you military secrets." Fair
Right,
enough.
right.
But then, yeah, calls later and says, "Okay, well, you created an itch, I decided to scratch, and I went down a rabbit hole, and then you're not going to believe this, and we don't find out what." So in one sense, you're right.
Yeah,
There's not a ton here, although there's the stuff in the middle we should
yeah.
circle back to about the
Although
mystery man.
Sam has set himself up for a problem if he is right in that every 6 months he has to take a lie detector test. So now he's put himself on the chopping block to help this. So I don't know if that'll ever circle back, but that was an interesting piece
Yeah,
of knowledge to have to try to deal with.
it's another talking about a pet peeve, man. Lie detector tests in TV and film. It's like those things aren't admissible in court. You know why they aren't
Yeah,
admissible
exactly.
in court? Because they
Exactly.
don't work.
Yeah.
um, and I mean, it is true though. It's actually a real world thing as well because they do give people polygraphs all the time, even
Hmm.
though they don't really work. And what they test is they don't test whether you're lying. They test physiological responses that you might associate with lying, right?
Yep. Yep.
Um, they
So all you got to do is
definitely,
create a baseline of that response all the time, and you're good to go. At least
yeah.
that's what television is taught me.
So my understanding is that what you should do is when they're asking you the baseline questions, clench your rectum. That's what that's what I've read. I've never tried it. I've never been given a polygraph, whatever.
Exactly. I think
Um,
that's exactly what I've read too.
but anyway, yeah, I mean, whether it's that or something else, like certainly he could get in trouble if he's giving away confidential information
Yeah.
or whatever. We'll find out what that is. But what do you make of this guy? I think I'm going to go ahead and say his name. His name is on IMDb. Um,
Okay.
Reed Birney's character is on the page as Henry. I don't know if that feels like a spoiler to anyone. If it did for anyone, I guess it would be book readers who probably put it together already. That's what I'm guessing. I haven't read the book, so I don't know who Henry is, but he does have a name, and it's probably helpful to be able to refer to him as such. But it hasn't been said in the
Okay.
show. You're absolutely right. Has not been said in the show.
Henry could mean something in terms of what we see in the books. Also, could be a combination of several different characters who could be responsible for a lot of different things. So I don't know that we necessarily can read too much into it at this point about what this character is and what he does and what his role is, other than just he is the force fighting against what Daniel and Helen are trying to accomplish. I imagine as we move forward, we'll hear and see more about whatever his network is or who he is quote unquote working for as we move along. But nothing, I think, big reveal in terms of what this name is.
Yeah, it's just kind of odd that they're hiding it from us. Maybe it has
Yeah.
some effect, to not give it to us in the show. I think it was last week when I compared him to the cigarette smoking man from the X-Files.
Yeah.
I continue to think that's apt. Like his role in things is clear enough. You know what I mean? He is the
Yeah.
um, whatever Wizard of Oz kind of, behind the scenes puppeteer. I mean, like that's the kind of character he's playing. I am curious about a number of things here, of course, the biggest one being directly related, I think, to the silos, although we haven't quite gotten there. If we take that leap, whatever it is, he says that Daniel and Helen are threatening something really important. I presume there's a connection there. Um, he says though that they like gave Steve some cush appointment, a new job, and they also gave money to Mr. Alameda and the pilot's father or whatever. Um, and I don't know if I buy that. Helen says she can't get a hold of either of these people. She has their phone numbers, but it just goes straight to voicemail or says the numbers disconnected or something like that. So yeah, I don't know. And then he's
Yeah.
offering.
I do wonder how much of that is just a smoke screen for, we'll give you a quote unquote second chance, especially as second chance for Helen, the job at New York Times, I presume, and what he's offering to her. Daniel doesn't exactly seem to get a second chance offer. He gets well, we will take your sister off of the support that she needs if you don't do what we want. But I imagine certainly, especially when you're dealing with dark web guys like Steven, this all could be a smoke screen for what he's trying to offer.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it definitely seems like it'd be a mistake to trust him, as it were, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But maybe he could get Helen a job at the Times, and I don't know, but I am curious, It's just like this guy won't even tell me his name, and I'm going to believe that those people he disappeared are actually like were given presents. Oh man. Um, regardless, it seems like by the end of the episode, they have come around to deciding no, they're not going to drop it
Yeah.
um, to take the carrot or avoid the stick. But whatever Sam has uncovered is how this is going to move forward. I guess I thought that he told Daniel on the phone, but maybe I'm wrong about that. How did you read this? You think Daniel already knows what Sam learned, or they're on their way to find out together?
I read it as that Daniel knows,
Okay, me
and
too.
that because of what he heard, he has made a decision to go grab Helen and say, "We need to get back into this, and I can't do it by myself." I think he is going to inform Helen, and they're probably going to go maybe go meet up and learn more about it. But I think Daniel has learned something that has motivated him to get back involved.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it never seemed like he entirely wanted to drop it either. Um, and Helen was more tempted by the Times job. And you're right. I mean, I presume they're referring to the New York Times. They don't say the New York Times, but like, if this is
Yeah.
supposed to be your dream job as a journalist who was previously fired from the Washington Post, I don't think it's the Washington Times.
No, I don't think
Um,
so.
this is the Washington Times. I think that is a paper, but it's like down the rungs of, in terms of reputation. Um, good. Yeah. So really, it's left more open in the Before Times timeline here. I did kind of enjoy how the episode played out and that they gave us a bit more of a reveal in the Silo 18 timeline, showing us that Bernard's alive. I mean, there's still tons of questions there, of course, but that was a nice moment to kind of end it on. A little bit frustrated that we didn't actually, learn what Sam has learned, but yeah, next week probably it works well enough.
Yeah, I think we're at a good moment now. We'll be halfway through the season. Again, I think there were some let's balance the plates a bit until we could get to this point. And now we're, for as much as we may have appreciated the pace of the season, I think we may get from what I know, we may get a lot more. I actually think we're going to get a lot more in the Before Times timeline, knowing or expecting what they have to cover over the balance of this season. And frankly, I think the Silo 18 story will be completely new to me because it seems like this is going to take a lot from the third book, which I have not yet read.
Yeah, or it will just be made up for television. Who knows? I don't
Yeah.
know. Again, I haven't read the books at all. So, but man, yeah, I'm in. I'm excited. I hope that they don't, after this episode, proceed to spin their wheels for 5 episodes.
Yeah.
Um, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
It's like 5 episodes of them sitting talking to Bernard in that room while other people come and they hide from Camille. Like, I hope it's not like that. It could be. It definitely could be. We'll see. Oh, I mean, another question I do have, just to mention it as we wrap up here, is about Lucas. And Lucas was hiding in the mines. And of course, it makes some sense that Lucas was hiding in the mines because he'd previously been in the mines. Of course, he hated being in the mines. Did he make friends in the mines? I'm not entirely sure about that, but okay, maybe. But there was another aspect where Camille got worried that he was trying to, through the mines, connect up with tunnels from another silo. And I'm wondering if he really was working on that. And if so, is there any chance that he succeeded? It's a question I
Oh
have.
yeah, it's hard to imagine how you could, you know, dig a hole to another silo, but whether you're trying to correspond with, communicate with, somehow reach another silo, I can see that happening certainly.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because it's been there in the season at least, right? That there are rules that they can't go out so far, and
Yeah,
we can put together that the reason there's that rule is because hey, there's actually another silo right over there, and they're also mining down there, right? So your tunnel could run into their tunnels. So there's at least the thought that that's what Lucas was trying to do, and that hasn't come up again. But I wonder a bit about that. Um, of course, down in that digger void area, all the way at the bottom is where Lucas went, and there was a door, right, where a computer, I don't know if it's the same computer, or is it the same algorithm
yep,
computer? Um, but if you remember that from last season, it told him the terrible truth down there, right?
that's right.
So probably worth
That's
reminding people of that as well.
that is something to be interesting to explore going forward. Is the algorithm Lucas talked to the same one Camila's talking to, which is it the same one at the other silos? Are they all connected? Like how does this all integrate? These will be interesting things to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. We hit on how in season two in the other silo it didn't seem to be really active. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, lots of questions. Looking forward to see where we go from here. Anything else you want to say about this episode before we wrap up, Ryan?
I think that's it.
All right, sounds good. So thanks always for listening. Hopefully you've enjoyed the podcast. If so, please do leave a good rating, review, all that good stuff. If you're on YouTube, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel and greatly appreciate it. Hit a thumbs up on the video. Be sure to check out TVObscast.com. You can find written work there on all sorts of TV shows. I'm writing on this season of Silo if you want to read articles. Ryan's currently writing on House of the Dragon, and we've got some other stuff going on too. We're actually there's a lot of TV this summer. We've got articles on Cape
Yeah.
Fear, on Lucky, on Rick and Morty, and I don't think I'm even mentioning everything. So do check
Yeah.
out the site. And if you want to follow us on social media, if you search for TV Obsessive, you should find us. And as for the podcast, we'll be back next week.
Yes, sir. We're looking forward to that. We'll see you then.